Okay, so hello, my name is Jonathan Freebert. Thank you for joining us for our Voices for Innovation webinar. Since I know we have a few new people to VFI who are joining us today, I just wanted to spend a quick moment just to tell you about the program. So Voices for Innovation, we're a Microsoft support community made up of Microsoft partners and IT professionals. Basically, we focus on education about public policy issues that are impacting the IT sector, impacting your businesses, impacting Microsoft. And so we have a great webinar for you today on the trusted cloud. And I presume, based on feedback that I've heard from many of you, they're getting a lot of questions from your customers about privacy, about security of our cloud services. And if you've been reading the news, policymakers are also looking at the legal and regulatory frameworks with the cloud that will impact services for our customers and for consumers as well. So with us today are two of our legal experts to walk you through our trusted cloud story and answer your questions. So Dave Dadoun, who many of you heard at the beginning of the call, is an assistant general counsel with Microsoft. He has been a member of the legal and corporate affairs team for over 10 years, working both in the US and in Europe. Patrick Basinski is a senior attorney on Dave's team at Microsoft. Both support Microsoft's worldwide sales and partner organizations, and they're keenly focused on helping Microsoft sellers and partners to speak confidently with customers about moving to the Microsoft cloud. So we have a great presentation today. Dave and Patrick are experts in this area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them. And again, one more time, I'm going to ask folks to mute your phones. So thank you. And Dave, Patrick,
All
you're
right,
on.
thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everybody. This is Patrick Basinski, and I'm going to start. Dave and I are going to share the mic here, so we're glad to be with you today. Um, you know, this, Jonathan. So I'm gonna drive from here if that's okay. And
Yep.
my slides are a little slow to react here, but the point here is about trust. And I think years and years ago, I think people, we all got comfortable using the banks for our money. Nobody keeps money under their mattress anymore because it's not as convenient, it's not as safe, and it's just nobody would do that. And so we're working on that same mindset with our cloud, and we need customers to know how it works and why it is a great solution they can trust. And I think you guys know this, but there's probably still some customers out there, who have doubts about the cloud in general. And so, to the extent you hear these kind of concerns, and this applies to customers of all sizes, it's really important that the customers have nothing to lose and everything to gain, not only from a better service experience, better features and functionality, but from a far and away from a security and privacy perspective by moving to a cloud like Microsoft's cloud that is built in the way ours is built.
Just one additional data point, which I think is important for you as partners in selling to customers, and that is not only understanding that naturally, and all of you experience this, the customers have concerns about privacy and security, but it's clearly important for them to understand the benefits, and that once they go to cloud, they will really have an understanding and appreciate the benefits of cloud in a way that traditional on-premise products don't provide. And the other thing I would just say on that is we actually have data that shows when you tell and address the privacy security story up front in your discussions with customers, you actually have a much better chance to close the deal. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is share with you what that story is to help you better close deals and accelerate cloud adoption in a way that will be meaningful and helpful to your business.
So if you start from the premise that the customers now, okay, I'm interested in the cloud. These are the kind of questions that obviously you are going to hear and your peers are going to hear, and they're reasonable things. And so based around these kind of questions, Microsoft has evolved not only our legal framework, but much more importantly, the very nature of our services and how we deliver them to address these kind of questions. And that's what the deck is going to show you here, I think. So is there a question? Okay. So we're going to fly through. This is probably an hour-long presentation if we were to take the time Dave and I would like, but then we like talking about this stuff. So we're going to shorten it, but keep this in mind. I think this is a great sort of, if you remember something from the presentation, this is a former EU commissioner, and the quote you can read, but the point here is I think 15 years ago, or a few years ago, Microsoft would have been in the group of companies and governments that would have thought of data protection as sort of a problem for our customers and privacy as something the customers had to deal with. And we've heard our customers, and we've actually made important changes to our services, to our legal framework around the way we offer our services, and to our engagement with regulators, policymakers, and industry at large, so that we truly can, we see this as a solution that we are selling our customers, and an asset that you need to know is something you can sell. And so I hope you'll be able to keep that in mind. And so here's how we think about this. There's a couple of different components of it. So first of all, there's compliance. There's enabling our customers to meet their compliance needs, regardless of their industry. And that means we build our services in a flexible way, and with a uniform high bar of standards across our services. All of our data centers for our enterprise services are operated to the same standard, which is that meets among the strictest standards in the world, the European Union. Likewise, we build in features that are allowing the customer to exercise control over their data in our cloud services. We'll talk more about that later. And finally, we have taken it upon ourselves to raise the bar on how we protect the data that the customers put in our cloud services, both in terms of the engineering that's going on, the encryption, the way we build our facilities, and the way we approach the legal issues around data security. And finally, overlying all of this is transparency. We know customers need to understand how do our services work, and how can they learn more about what's going on, where their data is stored, and so forth.
Just
Sorry, Dave.
One additional point. Underlying all of this, at the end of the day is the fact that we start from the position that customer data is owned by the customer. We're the steward of that data. It's really our position as a service provider to do nothing more than do these things in terms of enabling compliance, providing control for the customer, protecting the data in a way that we're acting as a steward of the data. The customer, it's the customer's data at the end of the day. So compared to other providers whose business model may be, by way of example, to use customer data for purposes of advertising, that's not in our DNA. That's not our business model. Our business model is strictly to provide the underlying service, where the customer, at the end of the day, is the owner of that data. And so that's really important. I think the other point I would just make is that we really see what we do, particularly on the compliance side, in terms of enabling compliance. We see that as features of the underlying service. And we'll talk more about that later on. But a lot of times I think people may misunderstand or misconstrue the notion that that's legal stuff or legal jargon, when in reality we see what we do to enable compliance as a feature of the service, and that's important because compared to some of our competitors, we offer and enable compliance in a way that is unmatched in the industry. And that's really important when you're selling and for example, if you're competing against Amazon, Google, Salesforce, these features can actually be a real meaningful differentiator that can help you win when you're in those competitive situations. So we'll talk more about that. But I do think it's important to think about those features and how they can be competitive differentiators.
So this, I think Dave just spoke to this, but in the area of compliance, like you mentioned, there are various pillars on which we build our offers, and so we're going to talk about a few of those. Regulator engagement, the way we don't just react, but we go and we speak openly with regulators around the world to understand and build our offers in a way that truly meets the customer's needs, even in segments with heightened requirements, and also, like I said, technologically building encryption standards that are evolving to meet the industry, to keep up with the industry. I think this is an example here. This is the healthcare industry is a great example of the way that Microsoft knew that there were particular, in the U.S., healthcare industry needs arising out of a couple of federal statutes. And we didn't just throw a form agreement up that sort of complied with the law. We actually went and worked with large customers in the space, and we asked them, what do you think you need? And by doing so, we were able to construct an agreement that's available to all, and in fact has been used by customers around the world as a additional feature that they get comfort from. But if it hadn't been for the engagement with the customers to begin with, we wouldn't have ended up in as positive a place on this. And I think this is only becomes an issue in when a customer gets down into a fairly specific level of discussion. But I think it's indicative of the Microsoft leadership position in this area. We're not interested in meeting the minimum bar. We're really trying to go as far as we can.
So on this one, I'll just add a few points. This specifically, I know some of you actually are focused in the healthcare space in the U.S., so you'd be familiar with what's referenced as a HIPAA Business Associate Agreement. That's what Patrick's talking about. A few things, which goes to a broader point around our approach to cloud in enabling compliance. We were the first cloud provider to offer HIPAA Business Associate Agreement, number one. Number two, we didn't look to set a minimum bar. We looked to provide a complete set of commitments and controls, essentially. This is essentially engineering controls about what we do to enable compliance based on feedback we received from customers, as Patrick mentioned. The result of that is, even though there are a couple other competitors out there who have followed our lead, namely Google, Amazon we hear as a business associate agreement, but they're not transparent about it because it's not publicly available. We've actually compared the commercial terms in terms of what we offer relative at least to what Google offers, because again, Amazon's not transparent about it. And what we've assessed is that we actually offer a more complete set of offerings on enabling compliance in this area than Google does. And so an example of that is that we actually flow through the commercial commitments to our subcontractors. So our subcontractors are bound by the same terms that we commit to our customers. Google doesn't do that. So, and Google, of course, just like us as a cloud service provider, has subcontractors. So what does that mean? It means that for a customer who signs up and uses Google Apps, who would now call Google Work, they won't get that same level of commitment or confidence that the subcontractors employed by Google are adhering to the same commitments in the HIPAA Business Associate Agreement as our subcontractors are. Another example is that we have, on security incident notification, we have a 30-day notice, which exceeds the statutory requirements of 60 days. Again, that's based on feedback we receive from customers, so we're exceeding the statutory bar in enabling compliance based on what customers have asked of us. And then, as Patrick mentioned, finally, many customers around the world have looked to HIPAA Business Associate Agreements as important in terms of their own compliance requirements, because the reality is, even though HIPAA business associate agreements are U.S. specific under U.S. law, we've actually engineered the service to enable compliance regardless of where the customer is located. So what that means is any customer around the world can benefit, and that's really important. Another area in enabling compliance is known as the CJIS, Criminal Justice Information Systems. This is specific to U.S. law. Again, if you're in public sector, if you're selling to state, local police, or federal police, this is based on FBI standards. There are very strict controls that are required to meet this, including background checks that we have to do for all personnel or subcontractors who may, in one way or another, have access to data. And so that's very specific to law enforcement requirements. There are other requirements around audits, by way of example, security awareness training, incident responses, a robust set of controls. It's the underlying data. We have what's known as Government Community Cloud. Our CJIS offering is for those customers who sign up under what's known as a Government Community Cloud offering, which means that in that multi-tenant environment, it's limited to state, local, federal governments. That applies both for Office 365 as well as for Azure. And it's unique. We're the only cloud provider that enables CJIS compliance. We have state and local governments around the country that have signed up to our offerings because of this. And so if you're selling to state and local governments, in particular police, law enforcement, it's in a differentiated offering that, again, no other cloud provider matches. The other thing it's not just what we do in terms of how we engineer the service. We back everything up by our contractual commitments. And it's both the privacy terms, the security terms. We have what's referenced here as EU model clauses, which deals with data protection and transfers of data from Europe to the United States. And you might ask, well, why is that relevant for customers in the U.S.? And the answer, it's actually a multifaceted answer that I'll give. First of all, the data protection requirements and privacy requirements in Europe are among the strictest in the world. And it's not just a piece of paper that we've offered to customers. We've actually had to engineer our services and our service offerings in a way that will meet the contractual commitments that we make under EU model clauses. And they cover a range of things, both on privacy and security, and also flow through of commercial terms down to our subcontractors. It's a robust set of commitments. And the reason it's important is, first of all, if you're selling to multinationals or any customers who do business, particularly in Europe, well, this will be relevant to them. In addition, as Patrick mentioned earlier, as part of our way of doing business, we have a proactive approach in working with regulators. And why that's important is not only did we craft our commercial commitments to meet data privacy requirements through these standard contractual clauses known as EU model clauses, we actually worked with data protection authorities in Europe. Again, the authorities who are responsible for enforcing data protection laws. And they actually, through a long period, over 18 months, in discussions with them, including us making changes to our engineering processes, they validated that what we have done in terms of meeting the requirements under standard contractual clauses, EU model clauses, is consistent with the requirements under EU law. We're the only cloud provider that has received that level of validation. We actually make EU model clauses by default available to all customers. All customers benefit from the broad set of privacy and security protections we make, regardless of whether they want to sign up to EU model clauses or not. It's engineering in scope. And again, it's really important because we're the only provider who has received that set of validation by data protection authorities who who really enforce some of the strictest laws in the world. Another area that we see ourselves as providing a robust set of commitments is on government demands for data. So as all of you are aware, as a result of the Snowden disclosures through The Guardian back in June 2013, a lot of questions by customers have been raised around what are you, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and others, what are you doing in terms of providing customer data to law enforcement? So Patrick will talk more about that a little bit later, but what we did was we made sure that we offered a set of commitments in our commercial terms that were very clear that we were not going to volunteer data to law enforcement in the U.S. or elsewhere, that our approach is always going to be to redirect and notify, and that at least for customers whose data is stored abroad, we'll litigate as necessary to ensure that the U.S. government is using appropriate processes to seek data, say, for example, through what's known as the MLAT process, the Mutual Lateral Assistance Treaty process, through other governments, rather than try and co-opt that by coming to us. And then finally, we have, and so that's important because we see ourselves as unique in the industry in terms of the commercial commitments we've made there. And then finally, we have a core set of features in our services that we've committed to as well. All of this is wrapped into what's known as standard online services terms. And I think Patrick will talk more about that in a little bit. But the important point there is it's all backed up. It's one set of unified terms for our cloud services. So not a different set of terms for Office and a different set of terms for Azure, all contained in one document. We've actually, interestingly enough, done a very exhaustive comparison of our commercial terms to our competitors. When I'm talking about Azure, I'm talking about Amazon, Google, Salesforce. And what we've found is that by far, we offer a better set of commercial terms in all of these areas that I'm talking about, and others, by way of example. So you can have confidence in having discussions with customers, particularly to the extent customers have questions about our commercial terms, that we offer a better set of terms, a more robust set of terms, that should give customers confidence that what we offer is by far not just the industry standard, but the leading standard. And I think that's really important as well. And we can share with you that analysis, and actually we'll talk more about this later, for this and other readiness content that we can make available to you. We'd appreciate your feedback. But I really want to highlight on the commercial terms, they're not just the industry standard, they're the leading standard, and by far better than our competitors overall. Another area in enabling compliance is in financial services. I think some of you may sell in this segment as well. I'll just touch upon it briefly because it goes to a few key things. One, we've worked really hard with customers to understand what their needs are. We've also had discussions with regulators to address what regulators expect us to do to enable compliance for financial services customers, not just in the United States, but around the world. We are, I can say with complete confidence, we're unique in the industry in having a financial services amendment tailored specifically for financial services customers that not only enables supervision by regulators, but also enables supervision, monitoring, and control by customers. And we do that through what's known as a compliance program. The compliance program is, again, unique. No one else offers this. It essentially, through the compliance program, we meet a key component of regulatory compliance in financial services, which has to do with audit rights. And under those audit rights, customers really have to be able to have a level of access to the cloud provider, the outsourcer, in a way so they will understand what the level of our controls are. They'll have information about the results of our audits. They'll have an ability to influence potential remediation measures and additional controls going forward. Also to be aware of any material changes that impact the underlying service, and then an ability to access our auditors and also Microsoft personnel as appropriate to get more information about what we're doing in terms of the operation of the service. And we do this through a compliance program that is really that, again, it's not just the industry standard, it's the only thing available for customers in terms of cloud service providers to date. So it's something I have spent a lot of time on, and the result of this effort has been that we are getting regulators, very influential regulators around the world, in some of the top financial capital markets in the world, to approve customers to deploy our cloud services. So huge momentum, a big differentiator. If you have financial services customers, this is really important for you.
So that's sort of the first pillar. We're going to go a little quicker here. That's the sort of compliance pillar. Talking about control, what do we do to give customers control over their data? There's always been an information security management system that we've operated all of our services to, and it's called ISO 20, not always, but for the last several years, ISO 27001, and it's an industry standard. Our competitors follow this as well, but that standard has never previously had any specific controls that relate to cloud or cloud service providers. So just this July, the ISO, which is an international organization made up of representatives from around the world, adopted a new voluntary, all standards are voluntary, but they adopted a new standard for the storage of personally identifiable information in public cloud. And it's really, the idea is that it's supposed to set a common high bar that people around the world can look to as an independent guidance of what customers should ask for. And some of the key principles are here on this slide. I think it's important to point out one of the key ones is that the provider may not use the customer data for advertising without express consent. And they must not condition the customer's use of the service on that consent, meaning that if they're offering a service, you can't merely say, yes, if you want to use, you're clicking to use the service constitutes your consent. So it's more of a transparent acceptance by customers. And there's a number of other items that are important, accountable to customers about information security breaches, communication with customers in a timely way in the event of a breach, giving customers control, meaning the right to get it back at the end of the service or to have it destroyed. And finally, because it's a standard that has a number of clear criteria, this can now be made part of a third-party audit by an independent auditor so that the customer has a way to say, okay, you say you do this, provider, prove it to me. And so Microsoft Azure service has already completed its ISO 27018 audit just recently, and soon you'll see this on the Azure Trust Center and the rest of our cloud services, Office 365, Intune, and CRM Online are already going through their audits or will be going through their audits in the coming months. And so within the next few months, you'll see updates on our trust centers that all of our enterprise cloud services now have adopted this ISO 27018 standard. And this is, I think, going to be a great differentiator.
We don't know for sure, but we don't anticipate, at least in the short term, that any of our competitors are working towards meeting the standard like us.
So Dave, maybe you can take this one, another control here.
Yeah, I think this is really for Office 365. It has to do with functionality of e-discovery for customers who, particularly customers who have legal departments. Legal discovery can be very burdensome and very costly. And the features that we have in this service, what's really interesting about this is that we actually have a litigation team here at Microsoft that, as you probably know, has experience in dealing with massive discovery requests, in particular, going back a decade or so with the antitrust litigation that we had, not only with the U.S. Department of Justice and the European Commission, but also through various class actions. Millions upon millions upon millions of documents were subject to discovery through that litigation. And the result of that is our litigation team, as a result of that experience, actually worked with the Office 365 team to build in this functionality. And it has a bunch of different features involved in terms of enabling preservation of documents, and searching documents, and so forth. And I'm not the expert on it, but it is a rich set of features on e-discovery that is unmatched. And it's unique also because it's based on the experience we had on some of the most complex litigation any company would ever be subject to. And the result of the benefits is really a cost benefit, because what we've ascertained is that the costs in using this e-discovery functionality can reduce the underlying cost from $2 million a year to, I think it's a few $1,000s a year. So the cost savings alone are roughly in the millions, and it's an incredible asset that customers who any enterprise or business that has any form of discovery request and litigation will benefit from the features of the Office 365 service.
All right, so the last pillar, how do we protect? I think some of this you've already heard, and we kind of went through it. In the privacy world, Dave mentioned the engineering restrictions, the policy restrictions, the subcontractor controls. I mentioned ISO, so I'm not going to spend time there. I think it's worth a couple of seconds on encryption because it's really an area of importance in the industry right now.
And I think there are multiple areas of encryption that we offer to customers, both data in transit, data between data, encryption in terms of transit between data centers, data at rest, and then end-to-end encryption, meaning, for example, rights management for Office 365. That's important because all these features of encryption are important because that's something customers care about. We've actually enhanced our encryption features in part because of concerns that the U.S. government was surreptitiously hacking into data centers, and that's one of the reasons we built in the features of data center to data center encryption. And then we have those perfect forward secrecy encryption features as well that we're working on, again, to address some of the concerns about the NSA surreptitiously trying to hack into our data centers. And the news wasn't about Microsoft, it was about Yahoo and Google, yet nonetheless we took these measures from a security standpoint to provide the most robust set of encryption features in the industry.
So one final thing that's worth pointing out is as an indication of our leadership in this area, and I think it's the cybercrime area. I think these statistics are probably known to you, but if not, look at the cost of cybercrime on business: $450 billion a year, 1 in 5 small and medium businesses, and that's just the business impact. It doesn't talk about the personal, and extreme, individual impact on privacy rights and financial rights. So what we're doing with our digital crimes unit, we're not only collaborating with lawmakers to shut down malware distributors and botnet operators, and thereby we're protecting the vulnerable populations like the elderly or the victims of child pornography. But we're also protecting IP rights worldwide by going against going and shutting down distributors of this. And I think the final takeaway here is the benefit of this is not just that it's the right thing to do and we're using our tremendous technology for the greater good. We're actually also putting these features back into our products. And so our customers get the benefit of this work, where we have lists and lists of IP addresses of compromised systems. Our customers, when they come to our digital crimes cybersecurity center, and they can see, oh, let's take a look at your network, and they can see, oh wow, look at all the systems on your network that are now victim to this. They're blown away, and these features are making our products better, and they're making our customers safer.
The example to build on what Patrick mentioned is in the financial services industry, there's an organization of financial services firms partnered with that organization where we have a collection of over 76 million IP addresses, and to the extent that those addresses may be at risk of being subject to malware threats, we can in real time inform those customers so they can manage that risk in a way that will prevent cyber criminal attacks. So it's been in the news, but it's an area where we're leading the industry.
We're going to wrap up and hand it back to Jonathan. I think we've touched on how important transparency is, but it overarches everything what we're doing. We want our customers and our partners to know. The quote from our General Counsel, and this flows through into the fact that we deal with the government with transparency, we deal with customers with transparency, and in the last point of evolving the law, which is near and dear to Jonathan's heart, we're actually working to not only fight what we feel are overreaching government requests, which is indicated by this case you may have heard about us objecting to a warrant from the U.S. government for consumer email data stored in our Ireland data center, but we're also working with lawmakers to move the law to a place where we think it should be, which is that the digital information of our customers deserves the same degree of protection as a letter stored in a vault. And so this is some of those concepts. I think I'm going to finish here with some resources that are available to help you. Jonathan can make these available, but I want to give him the mic back for the last few minutes. And I really appreciate your time, Dave, and I hope you will reach out to Jonathan and he can get you access to these documents and give us feedback on them.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Patrick. Let me just first open it up and see if there are any questions. This is I know a lot of information that they provide, but it's really great information. Again, I will post this webinar online so folks can go back and take a look at this. But let me just open it up and see if there are any questions, either I am or if you want to open up your phone line and just state your name and where you're from. Okay. Hello?
Hey, this is Charles Keating with Westtown Technology.
Hi, Charles.
Hey there, Jonathan. I had a question. Most of the stuff I'm pretty familiar with. I'm curious, in this kind of forum where it's a little bit more less open to the public, I'm wondering in terms of actual practical security measures. I mean, I have a lot of clients who do business within the United States. I think the encryption and security features are a great comfort in the back-end measures that Microsoft takes. And I think when I advertise that to them, it's a really great selling feature. And certainly the compliance is also excellent as well. I think from a practical measure, though, there might be a little bit of a concern about the lessened availability that you would get when you manage your own server to, say, be able to investigate things like security logs, or for somebody who's, USA-based and all their customers are USA-based, they want to make sure that their system isn't being penetrated through the front door, say via a compromised password for somebody that's out of the country. Is there information about some of the practical security measures that might be out there to help clients mitigate some of these risks?
Are you talking about, just so I'm clear, are you talking about traditional software products on premise?
The thing is, with Office 365, as you move so much more of your content of your business online, for some customers, they obviously are, they're not worried about Microsoft penetrating their system, and they're not worried about necessarily government security wiretaps. Obviously, some clients, depending upon their type, are, and those measures have to be taken. But I'm thinking of, if you talk about there's a large body of customers that are looking to manage and leverage the efficiency. They're a little bit concerned about loss of control and how much you can assist them in being able to make sure that they're safe. And I'm just saying, as you move online, there seems to be a little bit less visibility and less control over your system. You're assuming that Microsoft is managing it, like I read in the logs, there's, intrusion or penetration prevention, but you don't necessarily know what those measures are. I mean, how do you interact with Microsoft to make sure, for instance, that somebody from China isn't logging into your email system and downloading all of your information?
Good question. We do have a security. Are you familiar with our security white paper?
I'm going to take a look at some of that background, but yeah, I haven't read through all of the information.
There's a lot of information. The reality is, on the question you asked about who has access to data, we do provide transparency around that to some degree. I can't say complete transparency, but
right. I mean, there's a balance, because if you present too much stuff publicly online, then the people who are looking to compromise you can leverage that to try to tailor their.
The reality is, in terms of who has access to data, we can. I know on our Trust Center we have some pretty good information, including a video which I reviewed, which I thought was fantastic, because it explains, our process around who has access to data. The reality is, we start from a standpoint of zero access. So what does that mean? It means the starting point is no one has access to customer data, zero access, right? And then to the extent someone were to have access, it's not just, their particular protocols. Then that person actually has to get approval from someone else, kind of like, with nuclear arms where you've got multiple key holders, and literally. And so you've got to get separate approvals for someone to have access subject to the right protocols. That's all logged. If they get access, it's limited in time and scope only for the underlying purpose of which they have access to, and then the access stops. So the underlying, all that information is available. In terms of the logs themselves, I don't know if we make available the logs to customers. We can find that out. But
it's not, just so you don't misunderstand, most of my customers, they're not concerned about Microsoft accessing their information. I mean, if they have a business relationship with Microsoft and a trust agreement in place, they realize that it's protected legally and it's a USA-based company. I think their real concern is, we're dealing with a tidal wave of malware that's infecting people's systems, which means that any one customer who gets their system compromised, if an attacker gets control of somebody's endpoint computer, theoretically, they have visibility to any information that they can see through Office 365 through that one endpoint. The thing is, trying to track and see, if there's any fingerprints that would help, say, a small business customer, short of having advanced security training. How does Microsoft, this is the benefit. If Microsoft has the ability to say, we're not going to allow, somebody in China to access your Office 365 mailbox directly, that helps prevent some data leakage right there.
But
that's
the
kind of thing I'm talking about.
But even then, I'm not sure I understand, because do you mean a third party who's not supposed to have access, or do you mean a third party?
No, a third party that's not supposed to have access because they've, they've compromised the client, or they've compromised the security measures, or they basically cracked the password to get in through the front door. I'm not, the security risk is not, a Microsoft employee accessing the information or taking a hard drive out of a data center. It's more, hackers overseas that are penetrating the clients directly. And that's the concern most people are worried about.
Yeah, I think that requires a discussion with, what we call a technical solution professional or someone like that, then we can
Okay.
have that.
Yeah, Charles, I can follow up with you on that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will confirm with you, though, that the security measures that you have taken in place add a great deal of confidence that, and the way I position it for them is your systems are much more secure than pretty much most servers that have been built in the small or medium business sector size overall, and many enterprises.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In part because, if you have an there's the notion of the rogue admin, right? And so when you have an administrator who has access to data, well, I'm talking about traditional infrastructure, IT infrastructure.
Yes.
Then
yes.
You don't have the kind of controls that I was just talking about, zero access,
yes.
All that. That's built into the service zone reality, and I've heard this from regulators. They say in reality what you offer in terms of security is actually better.
It is, and it's vastly better. And I just wanted to confirm the fact that you use that to market and position your product is a very strong selling point, and it is very valuable. I mean, it's kind of like removing an entire issue off the table, that people would, in other words, I don't think most of the people are not having any issue with moving to cloud services. I think they're just concerned with hackers having access to more and more information and more of a business's information as all of it goes online. And I'm telling them, literally, probably having a Microsoft server is going to be way more secure than having your own local server because you're not going to have the same security measures in place.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're confident with that. This other thing I'm talking about is probably even a bonus beyond that just kind of pushes it over the top, that basically says, look, you have an organization like Microsoft with great resources that can help you secure your infrastructure at a greater level because it's hosted, because it's in a virtual environment, because it's professionally managed. And that's kind of like the next layer, I think, of seeing things happen, because with the way malware is going, I think that's what customers are really looking for.
Great. Thank you, Charles.
Okay.
Thank you. That's great. I'm glad we had that conversation. There was a few comments as well, just that people are hearing the same thing, so from their customers. So I appreciate that. So I'd like just to wrap up. I want to be sensitive of time. Again, thank you to David and Patrick. Thank you for everyone who joined. I did want to do a couple of quick plugs. So as Patrick mentioned at the end of the presentation, there is legislation going on in the U.S. Congress right now. As this Congress wraps up, we anticipate it's going to be reintroduced in the next Congress. We're trying to get, in particular, small business voices engaged on this. So I have on my screen right now, on our Voices for Innovation website, a statement of support around our email privacy government search. Relates to the Warrens case. There's some information about that on here, and then our statement of support. So we're asking folks, if you agree with the principles that were laid out here, to come and sign your name to that statement of support. We want to share that with legislators when the new Congress comes in. Secondly, we just launched a Channel 9 series, Voices for Innovation Policy Update. I'm going to put this link into the in here. So I encourage you, this is a shorter version of what was talked about today, but this is something that, again, you're welcome to look at, share with customers. We're trying to get our views up, so I'd encourage you to come check out the page and rate it for us. But it's a conversation with Mary Snapp, who's our Microsoft Corporate Vice President and Deputy General Counsel, and I think it does a really great analysis of this issue. So with that, and Duncan, I just saw your note on here, so thank you for that. If people want to stay on, we can, Duncan, if you want to stay on, we can, and David, Patrick, if you have time, we can answer that last question. But why don't I just, I'll wrap up here, and thank you to everyone who joined, and if people want to stay on for this last question about that Duncan just asked, feel free. So thank you very much. And Dave, Patrick, do you have time to answer that last question there?
we have time to hang around, but I honestly I don't personally have the answer. I think we're talking about the fact that it would be better use of time if there's a group of this, that we want to try to set up time with someone who's more expert in the arcane details of the Office 365 service. I think there probably is a good answer about what the controls are that are there for the customer to configure. But Duncan, your question suggests that you know more about this than I do.
The reality is, if you're asking, can a user log in from China, if you mean if they're traveling, that's something we can't control. That's a control that, again, I would want a technical expert, but I see that as something that the customer has to control. If you mean I'm a user, I go to China, can I log in?
It's not that. I'm thinking more in terms of, yes, obviously Microsoft's a global business and you have all types of customers. You can have some organizations that are going to have, employees, scattered in every country. But you also have, because it's a broadly delivered product, there are also going to be some small business customers that are going to be very focused in small markets, or maybe they're only focused in Washington State. And yes, their employees could travel, but generally they're not going to have a lot of international access. So, and I'm just saying is maybe this is more of an investigation of security practice or even a feature request, but something that said, really we shouldn't be having a lot of access from China in our servers because we don't have any employees in China, we don't have any customers in China. Why are we getting all this overseas access? I mean, when I start securing servers, one of the things I look at is who are the customers' business, who are their business relationships and where are their employees based out of, and you can actually secure and filter some of that information to prevent, unusual access. And again, this might be something that's more arcane.
I mean, I think if there were a customer, it is service specific, as one of the comments was, but taking any one of the services, if a customer sets up and provisions their service in Washington State, that generally is going to be served out of a data center in the United States, and there is no person from Microsoft who is going to be giving access to anyone. And it would be strange to me to think that any Microsoft load balancing or anything else would require a person in China for administrative reasons to have to touch that. So I don't understand the risk scenario that you're
saying.
No,
it's more of a third party. It's third party malware, hackers accessing information and being able to control or filter security logs.
That's a security question. Someone on the security side will.
Hey, this is Zohair from Microsoft. I'm an Azure website engineer. I'll just give a pointers to the the good people on the phone. I'm a technical engineer and I do this for a living. What you can do is this. There is something called as a $29 developer support plan, or if you have that some way of contacting Microsoft support, just open up a case and say you have a question on this. And if you $29 per month is nothing. If you open up a technical case to Microsoft and describe your scenario, we can really help you. You will be routed to the right team and the people who really know cloud in and out, the security part of it, and we will address your question with real, whatever your questions are. It could be technical, or it could be even billing or security or intrusion detection, how to stop certain IP addresses from reaching your site. We can answer all those questions with a support ticket, and we do this 24/7, so you will have a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Can you send me the link? I'll include that link when I do the follow up to everyone, or if you can send me the link where folks can go to find that information, that'd be great.
Okay, I will do that. I'll also put a link to the support forums where you can post the question free.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I think thank you very much. We went almost an hour, so I think this was a great session. Again, thank you to everybody. I'm going to wrap it up here, and appreciate everyone's time today. Dave and Patrick, thank you again for your time. And I will follow up on email. Thanks. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.